Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
I don't know if you can hear this, or if you'll even get this, but I wanted you to know. Everything's gonna be okay. I want you, everything will be fine. This is all over, and it's all okay.
The black hands that plagued me and plagued Jane took over me, but I did not resist. Instead, I looked up to the hooded figure that stood in the dark now, the one that kept us apart. As I was consumed by darkness, the glass showed me all of Jane's memories with me, as if in fast forward. Then the glass shattered and reformed. Jane was in school where we met, but I didn't exist. Everything that happened to her happened without me. Everything that would happen to her would happen anyway, but I wouldn't be there to help her. As I felt the hands come over my face, pulling me into the darkness, I held the locket tight. She had a new start, but I knew it would be just the same. This time, she would give into this being. He would have what he wanted. I had to get out. I had to get free. And then, I did. The locket I held in my hand grew as hot as the sun, and I soon felt myself falling. I was falling like a tumbling leaf from a tree in the fall. In the dark fall, I could see many images. Images of me. Images of my life. I could see Jane. I could see my parents. Her parents. Everything that ever existed in my life I could see. But then, I stopped falling. I was in a closet. A very familiar closet. The last I saw had been sealed shut. To my surprise, it opened with ease when I gave it a simple push. I was once again in Jane's room, and there she was. She was just as she was before she died. When I turned, the closet still had those insane scribblings from before, so I knew nothing had changed. But she looked a little different now that I looked closer. She seemed more depressed, distant. The dark lines under her eyes were more pronounced, as if she was not sleeping. The part that was bothering me was that I was standing right before her, yet she didn't even notice me. She looked up when the closet opened, but returned to writing her journal. I went to grab her, pull her into a hug, and an embrace, but I went right through her. My body went through her bed and all the way to the other side of the room in my stride. No, this can't. I turned back to Jane, but she was already getting up to leave. She pulled on a sweater, pulling the hood over her head, and I took the moment to look back at her journal. It was just as I read before. We were just one day away from her death. I had to stop this. At any cost. But how? I decided to follow Jane because she had opened her bedroom window and she was slipping out. Now, where are you going? We walked down the sidewalk. There were so many familiar things to me. The rain was coming down hard and the ground was getting slick, but Jane kept walking. Her hands were in her pockets, and I finally caught up to walk right next to her. Despite the fact that she couldn't see me, it felt like old times. Times I wish we got back. And I couldn't think selfishly now. I needed to focus on what was before me. The town lights were dim, but bright enough for me to see what was ahead. The rain was like a veil of darkness, a somber halo over my head. It was so familiar, yet I hated it. I was beginning to really hate the rain. I was wondering where Jane was going, but that soon got answered when we arrived at the local movie theater. It looked just as it did all those years ago. She didn't buy tickets. Instead, she quietly slipped by the ticket taker and went right inside. The movie that she ended up going to was some sort of quiet horror movie, a re-showing of a classic film. The theater was empty, and so I suppose most of the younger generation didn't appreciate the classics. When she took a seat, I sat right next to her. The dim theater was the perfect, quiet setting for the moment. I took a seat, but strangely, I could sit in the seat without falling through, but I couldn't touch Jane. So instead, I stared at her features, knowing I couldn't bring her some sort of comfort as she blankly stared at the movie screen. It now occurred to me that she was coming here to sleep. I guess being away from the hell that is your home, you'd need to get out. My hand reached out for her arm as she drifted right into a deep slumber, but it went right through it. With a sigh of frustration, I turned my attention to the film ahead of me. Yet, it was clear I was no longer alone with Jane. Next to me was the man in black, the one from the shattered abyss. His black mask, his dark eyes, they stared a hole through me as he sat next to me. I should feel anger, but I felt an odd sense of familiarity. Normally I'd ask what you were doing here, but I'm going to assume that you're here to take me back.
And where would I be taking you?
Back to that dark place. The shattered abyss. The space between spaces. Where the sky opens up and swallows me whole. Where 10 million black hands from the depths drag me back to the land of the dead.
The sky has yet to open. The sky opening is how you got here.
I don't understand. What do you mean the sky is already opened? What do you mean that's how I got here? There's so many questions that I'm left with and I don't have any of the answers to.
That's because you never asked them to begin with. Tell me, do you know what a wormhole is?
It's a portal between 2 points of space to cross a great amount of distance and time where it's bent, broken.
You're close, but not quite. The sky opened and she was able to call you, if you remember. It's all part of one giant circle that you were caught in, and time is repeating itself. We're coming full circle, and you have been caught in that circle because you will not stop trying to save her. And in the end, you will be the cause of it all. You were always the cause of it all.
How am I the cause of it all? That doesn't make any sense to me. I just got here. We tried to leave, and I had to go back to get answers, and I got pulled into this mess. I don't understand how I'm the cause of anything. If anything, it's her mother. It's her father. Her stepfather, even. Once he died, everything went to hell. You said that yourself, that she went looking for answers, and she got them.
Your lack of understanding is exactly why you're here in the first place. The answers have been right in front of you, and you don't realize it. You are caught in a full circle. Don't you understand? Look.
The man pulled off his mask, and I couldn't believe my eyes because I was staring into the eyes of my own. It was me. He was me. But it didn't make any sense. How was this possible? Was it a trick? It had to be, but I still had more questions. Actually, I had even more now. But he stared blankly at me. In the dark, the gleam of the bright movie screen before us, shining on our faces. Shining on, well, my face. How is that possible?
Think back to how this all started. Think back to what you saw in the shattered abyss. All of the memories, all the different realities. How do you think you were seeing that? They didn't appear until you arrived because you have already lived them.
I thought her mother started this. I thought her mother came looking for answers. To you. Well, I guess me. But to you.
She did. But don't you realize that was the start of everything? You were only me because you wouldn't stop. And this has been going on and on and on and on. You just haven't realized it yet. You tried desperately to save her because she would have died regardless. Let me show you.
At his words, the movie on the screen slowly faded to black, and instead I was shown something far worse than any horror movie. It was the sight of Jane falling off of a cliff, but she wasn't doing so on her own well-being. She was being pushed by her mother. Her mother murdered her, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Why? Why would she do something like that? I squeezed the arms of my chair as I watched on, the images of this dark memory flooding my brain. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel, except dread and pain. My eyes went to Jane, as if checking to make sure she was truly still alive, and she was still there, fast asleep. I turned to the man in black, tears starting to stream from my eyes, my cold, dead eyes. I clutched the locket that I held in my hand still to this very moment as it gripped onto the chair. Her mother murdered her? Why? Why would she do something like that?
And now you understand. You know now where to start. You know how to end this circle. End this for good, if you truly want to save her. But heed caution, it's more than just her mother that needs to be stopped. You know this. At least I hope you do.
I know exactly what I need to do. Tell me where to go. The man in black looked towards the screen, and once again it faded to black, and a very familiar scene opened up for me. The scene that we just watched, but it looked like it was slightly earlier. And then I fell again, like falling from the shattered abyss. But this time, I fell forward and impacted the ground, the wet ground before me, with the rain pouring down on my head and the sound of waves crashing against the cliff below. The oh so familiar scene, the one I keep revisiting over and over again. I was tired of seeing my best friend die. I was tired of visiting this dark and decrepit place. I was sick of it, tired of it. But I stood to my feet, but then I noticed I had something new in my hands. A gun. I clutched the gun tight, and then I turned my gaze towards Jane's house. There was a sense of cold running down my spine. Was I truly ready to kill somebody? Anything to save her, I guess. My steps were slow. My feet felt heavy, like they were held down by concrete weights as I made my way over to the house. It seemed to grow bigger, wider, and deeper as I got close, but I knew that was merely my anxiety and the reality of the situation settling in. I took a breath, and I slowly pushed open the door to move inside. Her mother stood at a counter, and this time she could see me. She shrieked, but I raised the gun. Don't say a word. I spoke this, an unfamiliar stern tone in my voice as I raised the gun. The barrel pointed directly at her head, but I couldn't do it. Not here, because I heard Jane's voice from upstairs, calling down to her mother. The woman looked up and she gave a somber plea for me to leave. She asked why me, of all people, was doing this, that I was Jane's friend, that I could walk away. And honestly, I could have asked myself the same question in this moment, about all of this. But I had come too far. I had been through too much. I needed to end this. Now. Outside. Go. With the gun pointed at her, I led her outside, towards the cliff. The one she was going to push her daughter off of today. I could finally see why. The lines in her face spoke grief, anger, pain. Feelings I often felt myself. We walked further away, and I looked back at the house to make sure Jane couldn't see. The sound of the waves crashing against the rock below, the rain pouring down. It urged memories that flooded my head. This endless loop of pain, misery, and grief I was stuck in. One that her mother was stuck in, but one that I had to stop. For Jane. It was always you. I should have done this to start with. I could have avoided so much. But you caused all of this. And I'm going to stop it. When I raised the gun again, this time I cocked it. But I noticed something. The man in black. Me. Standing in the dark just behind her mother. It was here I turned my gaze back to her mother. Her eyes as black as night. The same as he had. Or I had. He wanted me to do this. But what else was I going to do to stop this?
Well, what are you waiting for?
I think I now realize what you meant by putting a stop to this circle. I think I know what you truly want me to do here. What you've always wanted. You said back in the Shattered Abyss, you needed a dead soul. But it was never Jane's, was it?
You plunged yourself into darkness, trying to save her. And now you need them all. You need them all so you can keep them safe.
Keep them safe. I don't want to become you. I don't want to start this all over. This endless loop of death and misery. I think I've just realized what you meant by it was always staring at me in the face. And I realized it was always you staring me in the face. Never able to let go or leave or forget. Never able to move on. I think I know what I need to do. You're right. There will be a soul. But it won't be hers. It won't be her mother's. It won't be her stepfather's. It won't be anything. It'll be just me. I gazed upon the home. The home in the town that I had so many memories of. The rain falling onto my body. The drips, the drops, the sounds of the waves crashing against the rocks below. Sounds that once brought me misery, but in this moment, it brought me peace, quiet, tranquility. It brought me clarity. It brought me some sort of strange happiness. The way that people feel, I think, when they lie on their deathbed and they live their last moments. And they think about what they could have done differently, what they could have done to better themselves or create a better life for those around them. I brought the barrel of the gun to my mouth and I pulled the trigger. When I saw a flash of light, I was then plunged into the dark. But I saw, before my eyes, the man in black faded away. He disappeared. Her mother fell to her knees next to my now deceased body, shrieking, calling for Jane, a woman who didn't even remember me now, but yet her mother did. And that's why I knew this was all a trick. Because if nobody remembered me, and if I never existed, how did her mother know who I was? She now saw me as a man who tried to kill her mother and who blew his own brains out. But it was to save them. It was to save them all by me not existing. When the black faded, I woke up on the spot where I died, but instead of there being any homes or any town or Jane's home, it was just a lush green pasture, a field of what maybe it once was before the town was built. I stood up, a deep sigh leaving my lungs as I tried to figure out where I was, but I noticed something in the grass right before me. A phone. And as the rain continued to pour, I realized what phone it was. It was the one that she told me to throw off of the cliff. What felt like forever ago. The sky had opened up in that moment and took it here. So I picked it up. I stared at the picture. The background picture on my phone was Jane. Me and Jane the day before we left each other's lives, and left each other forever. I decided to pick it up and make one last phone call. She didn't answer. I guess this is what it feels like to be gone and never have anybody answer your calls. I decided to look up to the sky, throwing the phone over the cliff one last time as I decided to walk into the endless unknown. I felt everything change around me. Things grew warmer despite the rain. Things grew colder. But then, in the light, I found Jane again. Jane as I last saw her standing on that cliff when I was supposed to leave and move on. She was still here. But it wasn't truly her, it was some sort of peaceful image of her that I had. A memory. A memory I wanted to remember. I hope Jane heard those words that I left on that voicemail, because it would be the last time we'd ever speak. But I knew I would move on to better things, and I knew that I would finally be at peace. True love. True love never dies, but people do.
In the shadows we collide, whispers turn to cries. Fingers touch, it breaks. Fragile heart on stakes. Underneath this pale moonlight, souls entwined the night. Till it breaks apart, falling fragile heart. Fragile heart, it shatters fast. Hold it tight, it cannot last. Pieces fall, they turn to dust. Fragile heart and broken trust. In the silence echoes stay. Memory fades to gray. Once was strong, now weak. Falling hard, it sinks. In the void we drift away. Nothing left to say. Eyes that cannot see. Broken heart is free. Fragile heart, it shatters fast. Hold it tight, it cannot last. Pieces fall, they turn to dust. Fragile heart.